Donald Trump's proposal to declare a national emergency and use the US military for mass deportations, if implemented, could have wide-ranging legal, humanitarian, and practical implications. Legal and constitutional concerns. Use of militaries. The plan involves potentially repurposing the military under a national emergency declaration, which raises constitutional issues about using armed forces for civilian law enforcement. While the Posse Comitatus Act generally prohibits this, legal loopholes, such as the activation of the National Guard under state governors or invoking the Alien Enemies Act, might enable limited use of military assets. Source: 6 source, 7 source. 2. Judicial challenges. The courts are likely to scrutinize such measures. Past rulings protect rights such as asylum claims and limit indefinite detention of migrants, especially when their home countries resist repatriation. Source: humanitarian impacts. Family separation and disruption. Mass deportations could break apart families, as many households with undocumented immigrants also include legal residents or US citizens. This raises ethical concerns and risks creating social upheaval in communities. 6 source. 2. Strain on resources. With detention centers already operating near capacity, housing and managing large-scale detentions would require significant additional resources. This could include temporary staging grounds near the border, likely in states like Texas. 7 source. Practical challenges. 1. Operational feasibility. Conducting mass deportations on the scale suggested would be logistically challenging. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, (CIS), typically conducts targeted operations, and scaling this up would require massive resource investments and coordination. Source. 2. Economic and social consequences. Large-scale deportations could exacerbate labor shortages, particularly in industries reliant on immigrant workers, such as agriculture and construction. This could harm the economy, while also creating labor gaps in critical sectors. Political and public response. 1. Polarization and resistance. The plan is likely to face strong resistance from immigrant advocacy groups, state and local governments, and even within federal agencies, such as the military. Public opinion might also push back due to concerns over humanitarian costs and government overreach. 6 source, 7 source. 2. Fear among immigrant communities. Even the threat of such actions could create widespread fear and anxiety within immigrant populations, potentially leading to social isolation and avoidance of essential services. 7 source. While Trump's rhetoric underscores a hardline approach to immigration, actual implementation would face substantial barriers, including legal challenges, logistical difficulties, and political backlash. This issue will likely remain a central and divisive topic in public debate. If Trump were to declare a national emergency, gain Republican control of Congress, install loyalists in top military positions, and receive a Supreme Court ruling granting immunity for official acts, significant barriers to using the military on US soil would remain. But they would primarily depend on the resilience of institutional norms and external political and societal responses. Here's an analysis of potential obstacles and dynamics under this scenario. Legal and constitutional frameworks. 1. The Posse Comitatus Act. This law generally prohibits the use of federal military forces for domestic law enforcement unless expressly authorized by Congress. While a national emergency might provide Trump legal justification under certain statutes, such as the Insurrection Act, misuse of these laws could still be challenged in courts, particularly if the justification lacks a credible basis. 6 source, 7 source. 2. State sovereignty. States and governors can resist federal overreach. For example, if Trump deployed National Guard units under federal orders, states with opposing governors might refuse to cooperate. However, friendly Republican governors might comply, creating regional disparities in enforcement. 7 source. Practical and institutional barriers. 1. Military resistance. Despite replacing top leaders with loyalists, the broader military institution often acts independently to preserve its apolitical nature. Military rank-and-file personnel may resist orders they deem illegal or unconstitutional, as loyalty to the Constitution is deeply ingrained in their training 6 source, 7 source. 2. Logistical challenges. Conducting large-scale military operations domestically would require significant planning, resources, and support structures that could strain even a well-resourced military. Resistance from local law enforcement and civilians could further complicate enforcement. Source 7 source. Political and public pushback. 1. Domestic political resistance. Even with Republican control of Congress, dissent within the party could arise if actions are perceived as overreach or harmful to public trust. This would particularly be the case if such actions result in significant unrest or economic fallout. 7 source. 2. Public opinion and civil unrest. Deploying the military on U.S. soil for enforcement actions could provoke widespread protests, civil disobedience, and potentially violent confrontations. Such responses could delegitimize the government's actions domestically and internationally. 7. International consequences. 1. Global backlash. Using the military domestically in this manner would likely draw condemnation from international allies and adversaries alike, affecting U.S. diplomatic and economic relations. This could strain resources and weaken broader national interests. Source. Key conclusion. While such a scenario might empower Trump to sidestep traditional checks and balances, actual implementation of military enforcement domestically would face challenges from the military's internal ethos, state-level resistance, civil disobedience, and institutional inertia. These barriers hinge on the strength of democratic norms and the willingness of individuals and institutions to act against perceived authoritarian overreach. If these fail, the primary resistance would shift to grassroots, judicial and international opposition.